You know, I wonder, I don't think people take me seriously as a classical music commentator, and you know why?
Why is that?
Because I don't have a furrowed brow. I gotta work on my furrowed brow.
You've got quite a brow there, though.
Yeah, that's because I don't have any hair there, so the brow just keeps going, you know? But, yeah, I don't know. I think I want to be a different kind of classical music commentator, the one without the furrowed brow, you know, the guy in the street classical commentator.
Right.
Yeah.
You're doing a good job at that.
Yeah, I think so, but people have to pick up on that. We got to get people into the new way of doing things here.
There are some really stuffy classical commentators that I've listened to, and some boring ones.
Yeah, through history, there always have been. A lot of them are falling away now, but yeah, they're still around, okay? I gotta say, I think Gramophone does a good job. They're pretty down to earth, but they are kind of like more serious, I think, than we are. But I'm trying to dispel that image, you know? Right. It's really hard to do. I
got an idea. You could become the furried brow commentator.
The furried brow,
if you get one of those monobrows, let those eyebrows grow together. And then...
Yeah, I'm not doing that. I've never been a fan of the unibrow.
No.
I can't have a unibrow anyway. They won't grow together. I don't.
Well, that's good.
So that's good, yeah.
That won't help you with the ladies either.
Yeah, they don't like that. It's too caveman, you know.
Well, you're listening to your Men on the Street, or actually Men in the Mountain Lair.
Yeah.
On Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. We're here at episode 218 this week. I'm your co-host, Russ, by the way.
Yeah, and I'm your co-host, Mike. The one with the unfurrowed brow. Actually, neither of us have that, so there you go.
Before we get into this week's music, I want to send out some thanks from last week. First of all, to pianist-composer Ramiro Zayas for sharing our episode where we featured his recording Collector. It's a very interesting drumless ensemble recording. Lots of new ideas of combining sounds there, so be sure to check that out. Also, thanks to Antonio Martino of AMA Records for sharing our episode both on his personal page and on the AMA Records Facebook page. We featured the first live recording on AMA Records from drummer Bastian Menz, his trio with everything in between. So if you haven't heard that, it's a really good live album. Go back and check that out as well.
Yeah, I'd also like to thank Julia Hamos for writing back to us after we talked about her album Ellis Island last week, which combines Hungarian and American works, reflecting her background and heritage. She wrote us this really nice letter, and she actually volunteered to be on the podcast. We got to start thinking about how we're going to incorporate her one day. Maybe we'll do that over the summer. We'll see what she's up to.
I have a couple ideas, yeah.
That could be cool. She could be a good guest host. If we can convince her to do that, we'll have to see.
Yeah, it'll be fun to have a guest host on again. All right, let's roll into this week's music. And if you can't see the full description or the recording list and links are hard to follow on whatever platform you're listening to us on, you can always come over and check us out on our host site. That's Podbean, PODBEAN.com. Everything's easy to follow there. If you enjoyed the podcast, please follow or subscribe wherever you like to listen to us, and tell a music-loving friend. Help us grow our audience. If you take a moment to give us a ranking or write a short review, that helps us get listed in the music category recommendations on the various podcast hosting places. That's another way new people can find out about us. Come follow us on our Facebook page as well to get extra info and more new releases throughout the week. Mike put up some recommendations in our past jazz category of funkiness for the 4th of July there.
Yeah, I got to say, I've been listening to those again, and I got to say, I don't know how funky they are. The Delvon Lamar ones are funky, but they're very American, bluesy and swing and all this really cool stuff. It was good to listen to again.
Yeah.
We're using a wide definition of funk, let's say.
Yeah.
Very wide. We're stretching it out. We just wanted to get those albums up there. I love that Ben Patterson album, Cooking in the Coop.
That's a good one, yeah.
I listen to that a lot. That might be one of my top 10 all-time adult music recommendations. Yeah.
You can leave a message or comment there on Facebook as well. Come over and check us out on X. We're Adult Music Pod over there. I put up the new episode links there. And if you'd like to contact us directly with any comments or questions, our email address is adultmusicpodcast, all one word, @gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We're going to play music samples as part of our discussion as usual, and this is our fair use disclaimer. Music sample clips are for commentary and educational purposes. We recommend that listeners listen to the complete recordings, all of which are available on streaming services in the links provided. And we also suggest that if you enjoy the music, you consider purchasing the CDs or high-quality downloads to support the artists. And we're going to start out in the classical category this evening, merging two worlds together in interesting ways, Mike.
Yeah, this is pretty interesting. The Baroque choice for this work is an album called Persia and Baroque, Classical Persian Music and European Baroque. And can I just say, first of all, what timing with Iran in the news all the time.
Exactly.
To have released this album. Now, it merges the two cultures together. And of course, these recordings are made a year before they're released. So they have nobody has any idea what's going to be happening in the world. But I don't know, maybe a recording like this can bring some peace if we kind of start seeing our similarities and things like that. Anyway, this is recorded by the Hamburger Ratsmusik. That is Simone Eckert, viola da gamba and artistic director. Anke Dennert on harpsichord and organ. And we also have the Neoclassical Ensemble of Tehran, directed by Arash Mohafez. He also plays the santur with Farid Kiradmand on percussion. He plays the tombak, dayer, bendir, and he also sings on one track. And Nima Nouri on the tar. This is on the Christophorus label. The second time this year we've featured this label. Amazing. Released on June 20th. Okay, I also want to mention, by the way, as part of the Hamburger Ratsmusik, Ulrich Wedemeier, he's pictured on their website. He plays the lute, chitarrone, and theorbo, and he isn't on this album, but they feature him on that site, so I just wanted to mention him as part of the ensemble.
Right.
Okay, so he's not on this album. Simone Eckert, the viola da gambist and artistic director of Hamburger Ratsmusik, is the mover and shaker here. She wrote the booklet notes and even kindly sent me a copy of the booklet, and also requested that I mention when we put this up, so I'll have to email her after we upload the podcast. I'm deeply grateful for that. Thank you, Simone, for the booklet note. It was really important for me to read that because I wouldn't have known a lot of things otherwise. So good booklet notes. And she's not the only person to write the booklet notes. Arash Mohafez wrote about the Persian music, so the both of them have a separate note in the booklet.
There's a nice historical explanation in there. I enjoyed that as well.
Right, I did too. I didn't really incorporate that too much, though, because it would have been way too much to do on these tracks, but it's a really informative read if you're interested in the workings of Persian music. Mohafez does a deep dive into Persian music modes, and you know how we love modes on this podcast.
Right.
Maybe it might be too academic for many readers, but it's highly informative if you do the work. I did a little of the work, but not that much. While we tend to think of Europe as its own cultural body, its fascination with Middle Eastern culture goes all the way back to antiquity. And it's kind of odd that the musics from these two regions sounds so different, although we started with modes ourselves in Europe.
Yes.
And just kind of moved on to harmony, and that really changed everything. All right, let's listen to this album. The first track, or the first piece on the album, is by Handel, of Messiah fame. Everybody knows that. This is the overture to another, I guess it's an opera or an oratorio. I didn't look this up. Siroe, Re di Persia. Siroe, King of Persia. So right into that Persian theme right away. Europe meets Persia. The libretto is by Pietro Metastasio, whose texts were set and reset by numerous composers numerous times in the Baroque era. Can you imagine being this guy? You write like an opera libretto and you have all of these composers, setting your operas. They're all the same words. There are loads of operas with the same text, just sung in different ways. Pretty interesting. Anyway, the story is centered on a power struggle for the throne, intertwined with a love story. Well, perfect. Sounds like a typical Baroque opera, really. It takes place at the Persian royal court approximately 1,500 years ago. We hear, on this album, the overture, and right away, we're getting that Persian flavor with the Persian instruments mixed in with the Hamburger Ratsmusik instruments. The overall texture is pretty light, as we don't have the massed strings that this piece usually gets. Even in a Baroque ensemble, a leaner Baroque ensemble would have more massed sound than this. Let's hear this and get ourselves into this sound world. All right, Handel with the false cadence there, catching me by surprise. Yeah, how about that, hearing a French overture, that dun, da-dun, da-dun rhythm, with these Persian instruments? It's a little bit disorienting, let's say. I rather enjoyed it, though. It's a really nice, new, fresh sound. Track 2 is the Allegro to this overture. And it's nice to hear the gamba, that's Simone Eckert, along with the Persian santur, that's our other director, Arash Mohafez. Santur is a hammered dulcimer-like instrument. We also hear the tar, which is a long-necked lute-like instrument. It's plucked. And what sounds like a Persian frame drum, the bendir or the dayer. I'm not really sure what the sound difference between these two is. So both of these are used on the album, as well as a tombak, which is like a goblet drum, and that has a deeper sound. I'm pretty sure this isn't it, but it might be. I don't even know. The Persian instruments are played here in Western keys and add a bit of timbral spice to the composition without changing it. It's a gentle, enjoyable listen. Let's hear this section as well. Hearing those Persian instruments involved in counterpoint really is something new for my musical world.
I like the way the drum rings out in there, too.
Yeah, good recording there. Track 3 is a jig. We can hear the tar and the santur. I hope I'm saying tar right. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Along in the lead here. I'm pretty sure the tombak is in the second verse. And there's a harpsichord back there, too. The piece is given a light jig rhythm, sailing across the rhythm's triplets rather than dipping with it, so it's kind of a steady sort of triplet rhythm. It's really the timbral quality that captivates here, though. Okay, in track 4, we go deep into Persia. This is called Ajamlar, which means Persian musicians. They are the, I guess, the composers of it. Pishro in Makam Neyshabur and Osul Chambar. This is from Kevseri's manuscript in the 18th century, arranged here by Arash Mohafez, the director. Okay, we've got some new vocabulary to learn. See, this is why people don't listen to classical music, because they have to learn new things. But I think you should take the time to do this, because it's really worth it. Okay, so a pishro is a traditional instrumental composition that serves as an introductory piece in a classical performance. And it's meant to set the mood. And it's more than a musical prelude. It's a sophisticated piece that showcases the performer's mastery of melody and rhythm. It has a spiritual dimension, aligning with the broader role of Persian classical music as a tool for emotional and mystical expression, often linked to Sufi traditions and poets like Rumi. I want to mention something about that too. When we're listening to Western music, we tend to think, oh, is this a sacred work or a secular work? When you're listening to really the classical music of any other country in the world, the two are usually combined. You know, the spiritual element is just a given in all of that music. I guess you could say that's sort of true in Western music too, but we tend to separate them out. The other word we need to know is an osul, which is a rhythmic cycle. So you can kind of think of even Indian music for this. It moves in rhythmic cycles. Well, so does the classical music of Persia. Osul Chambar has 12 beats, I'm told. One thing Western music referencing Persia did not adopt was Persian music's monophony, quarter tone scales, or its complex rhythms. And part of the reason for that is, I think we went the harmonic route, and you had to kind of cut off the idea of quarter tones somewhere if you're going to use harmony, because otherwise you're not going to be able to build those different levels of harmony up into a single piece. Anyway, frame drums, bendir and dayer, are heard with Eckert's vibratoless viola da gamba and then the santur, very much in front, grabbing the most attention. I think it's because of the relative exoticism to our ears of this music that the Persian instruments really tend to register the most. The tar is in after a while too, and by the 1 minute mark we're in full Persian rhythm and makam. So makam is the Persian mode, and we have this in Arab music as well. All right, so let's hear this and hear what Persian music sounds like. And some nice tar playing there at the very end of that sample. So the sparsity of instruments and the gentle way they're played give the performance an overall light texture. At 1 minute and 55 seconds, the viola da gamba and tar played together in a sort of interlude. This really has the sound of the Middle East to it. At 3 minutes and 35 seconds, there's a pause. Then the gamba comes out with a pizzicato section, doubled by harpsichord. And it's the first time I'm really clearly hearing the harpsichord in the texture. It tends to get buried beneath the Persian instrumental timbres here, because it's similar to them, and I think it's sort of a quiet instrument, so it doesn't really come up in the front. And then we hear the tar. I thought this was a real treat for the ears, and it had me anticipating more, and no worries, we're going to get a lot more on this album. Track 5, Marin Marais, the French composer of music for the viola da gamba for the most part. This is from his 4th book, published in Paris in 1717, I guess, of gamba works. The work is called L'Arabesque, and the title Arabesque invokes the elaborate ornamentation in the tradition of Islamic Western Asia, though there doesn't seem to be much of that in this composition until the 2 minute and 50 second mark. The harpsichord and viola da gamba provide a lilting rhythm for this piece, again, lightly played on the gamba. I'm really used to gambas digging in when they play Marais. They have that really deep, throaty sound. But the tone is lighter here. The rhythm is given a strong accent here, and I really liked that as well. Let's hear a little bit of this. So we have only the Hamburger Ratsmusik members playing on this track. Track 6, Ajamlar, Persian musicians is the meaning there, or the writers of this. Pishro Golestan in Makam Panjga and Osul Doyek. So we remember these words now, right? Pishro is the introductory piece, Makam is the mode, and Osul is the rhythmic cycle. And they have names. I don't know what those names mean specifically, but it's a good starting point. This is from Kantemir's manuscript in the 18th century, arranged by Nima Nouri, the tar player, on this album. Osul Doyek is an 8-beat cycle. Here we're squarely with the Persian instruments, so in this and the previous track, the two traditions are set off against each other, catching whatever reflections come up. The longer 8-beat cycle has this melody stretched out and sounding more spacious, like a Western classical work, though of course the makam brings the Persian flavor. The composition has several sections. At 1 minute and 25 seconds, the viola da gamba and harpsichord enter, and now there's a dialogue between the two traditions. Let's hear it from that point. I really enjoyed the calls and responses that occasionally come up between the Western and Persian instruments, and we heard a little bit of that in that sample. I really enjoyed this composition a lot. Track 7, Tombak Improvisation. This is by Farid Keradband. The tombak is the goblet drum. You can distinguish its timbre clearly here. Keradband brings a lot of subtlety to his dynamics on the instrument and introduces some surprising new timbres, such as playing on the rim, at certain parts of the composition. Let me give you a sample of this so you can kind of get an idea what this sounds like. This whole improvisation is around 6 minutes long, and I encourage you to hear it because it's got some fantastic sounds in it, and it's really hypnotic all the way through. I really enjoyed it a lot. The sample is from a section in which there are a lot of rhythmic changes, and that caught my ear too. The improvisation has a brief section of physical virtuosity toward the end, and rather comically ends on a downward bending tone. Track 8, Telemann, Miroways, TWV 21:24, Scene 12, Marche en Persian. Miroways, I'm probably not saying that right, Miroways, maybe, is an opera by Telemann which tells of Mohammed Miroways, who is styled as the Persian Cromwell. That doesn't make him a really upright person, does it? The opera itself is based on a report of how Miroways, the son of an Afghan prince, conquered Isfahan in 1722. However, the opera's libretto reinterprets Miroways as the protector of Persia, restoring the son of the deposed Shah as the rightful ruler of the conquered province. The performance has an appealing, steady flow to it. It sounds stately with the Persian timbres carrying most of the weight. I can hear Simone Eckert providing continuo in the back, and there's a faint harpsichord too, with the Persian instruments drawing the attention. They're just not hitting that cadence solidly. Boy. At around the 1 minute and 20-second mark, there's a brief Santur solo over a droning viola da gamba. This goes on for some time and sounds like an improvisation. The tar then begins a solo section at 3 minutes and 30 seconds, still with the viola da gamba providing a drone support. Quarter tones are very noticeable here in the slight bends that Nimanuri does on the tar. The piece effectively turns into a Persian work in the solo section, and the theme is briefly stated at the end to end the piece. Now I'm going to sample a tar solo later in the album, and we'll get to hear some of those bends and the qualities that this instrument can produce. Track 9, Demetrius Cantemir, Pishro in Makam Bozorg and Osul Zarbain. This is from Cantemir's manuscript from the 18th century. It's got an osul of 30 beats. And here we have the angular melody of Persian music at a slow tempo with the tar and santur in the forefront. Simone Eckert on the viola da gamba can be heard as well. This sounds like 4/4 to my ear, though it's 30 beats. I'm not really sure how that's being counted. At any rate, the rhythmic pattern is pretty square. The piece winds up being hypnotic at the tempo it's played at, and it's pretty compelling and almost mystical as it goes on for 6 minutes. I guess the whole 30-beat cycle has to unfold. I don't have a sample for this. I'm going to send you to that on your own. Track 10, Joseph Nicolas Pancras Royer. Wow, that's a long name. His opera Zaïd, Reine de Grenade, or from Zaïd, Queen of Granada, from Pièce de Clavecin, published in Paris in 1746. It's actually a ballet. The story follows the Queen of Granada, torn by an inner conflict over the choice between two Moorish princes. Ultimately, she selects the one who is morally superior, to which I say, good for her. The harpsichord that opens the track, it's not always the case, is it, in real life?
No.
The harpsichord that opens the track is almost startling after the previous track. It's a quality I like about the album, the unexpected timbral changes. This begins as a harpsichord solo, which is in fact its origin. Anke Dennert's harpsichord has a gentle, chiming quality, and it's recorded at what I feel is an ideal distance, not quite as quiet as it sounds in concert, but not right up front either. It sounds like we're standing next to the instrument. Let's hear a sample of this. It's good to hear Dennert get a solo piece. She's been in the background in the tracks featuring Persian instruments. She has a comfortable way with the phrasing that makes this piece sound like coming home after a long journey. The piece acts as a sort of interlude in the program. Track 11 is probably my favorite track on the entire album. It's the Santur improvisation in Makam Heyaz Ozal, and it's improvised by Arash Mohafez, the director of the Tehran Ensemble. This has quarter tones in abundance, and that's probably what drew me to it. Let me just give you a sample of this, starting at around the 30-second mark. Yeah, so you hear those quarter tones all over that. And it sort of sounds to our Western ears, since we're so used to the scales that we use, that the instrument's out of tune. But that is not the case. It's what quarter tones sound like. And I really loved it once you understand that. I guess you could, if you're playing an out-of-tune instrument, you could just claim to be playing in quarter tones and just wow your audience that way.
You have to do it on purpose, yeah.
Yeah, you have to do it on purpose to make it believable. The sound here is intoxicating after the Western scale pitched harpsichord work we just heard. The improvisation speeds up for a while midway through the first to second minute and then goes back to the slower tempo. I found this piece really intriguing. Track 12, Anonymous, Pishro in Makam Ozal and Osul Fakte, from Kesari's manuscript, 18th century, arranged by Arash Mohafez. It's a 10-beat cycle. The viola da gamba gets a big roll in the melody at the beginning of this Pishro. There are some pretty intriguing tones in there, too. I want to sample this at the beginning, before the percussion rhythm comes in, so we can hear Eckert's playing clearly. Now, I'm sure everybody heard that fantastic tone about 20 seconds in that really just sounded like it went into a different key, like for a moment there. That comes back throughout the piece. I really liked it. It really acts as sort of a signpost. Eckert here gets some time playing in unison with the Santur as well. So the two directors again playing together. You know, that odd note comes back, as I said, a few times during the piece, and it really bent my mind every time I heard it. The piece has a slow tempo and takes its time unfolding. Again, it comes across as hypnotic due to its rhythm and pacing. The tar, and especially the Santur, get ample time in the spotlight as the theme unwinds. The piece ends rather modestly on an unresolved unison melody line. Track 13, Marin Marais, fifth book, Paris 1725, Marche Persan dit la Savigny. Here, Hamburger Ratsmusik duo Simone Eckert and Anke Dennert take the lead on viola da gamba and harpsichord, with Nima Nouri adding spice via the tar. This particular piece belongs mostly to Simone Eckert, who's in the lead throughout. Arash Mohafez on the santur comes in at the 2-minute and 45-second mark for playing of the theme, and he brings the piece to an end with the rest of the ensemble. Track 14, also by Mohafez, Le Tourbillon from the fourth book, Paris 1717. Here, we're getting an image of a scorching whirlwind sweeping dramatically across the Iranian deserts. This also features Simone Eckert in the lead, accompanied at the beginning by the harpsichord. So Eckert evokes the desert winds with her continuous figured line, and I think the viola da gamba's tone here is just too gentle to evoke a really scorching wind, but we do get a sense of something implacable here, like the wind just isn't stopping. Track 15, Tar, pre-composed Taksim in Makam Nahavand e Kabir, played by Nima Nouri. So Nima Nouri steps out on the tar for a 4-minute solo, and we get to hear the tar's tone in isolation on this track, so let's hear that too. There are around 4 sections in this piece, 2 slow, improvisatory sounding ones followed by something faster and more melodically sure. Track 16, Abdul Qadir Maraghi from the 14th to 15th century, Naksh in Makam Nahavand Kabir and Osul Dar Ravan. This is arranged by Farid Keradmand. It's a 14-beat cycle, and it's a vocal composition sung here by Farid Keradmand. It starts with percussion, and in this track we get Arash Mohafez singing as well. Let's hear this. And we are squarely in Persia there. Great voice, by the way, on Arash Mohafez there. Really impressive. Tracks 17 through 24 are the last work on the album. Henry Purcell, Distressed Innocence or the Princess of Persia, Z577. This music served as the introductory music to a theatrical tragedy by the English playwright Elkanah Settle, which explores the theme of persecuted innocence. A young, beautiful woman, threatened by a villain, is ultimately rescued by a hero and emerges stronger from her ordeal. Track 17 is the overture, and here Simone Eckert takes the melodic lead, with Nima Nouri on the tar accenting with accented notes or chords. The rhythm surprisingly changes at 1 minute and 10 seconds, and the percussion instruments come in. I think it's a tombak here. The tradition plays well into the similar transitions we heard in the Persian works. Track 18 is an air, the second movement of this suite. This slow work has percussion added to it, and its sound with the Persian instruments draws out a Persian quality in its rhythm, rather surprising. Track 19, Slow Air. This air is given some heightened emotion here, to my surprise, by the inclusion of the santur, which gets some plaintive tones out of the high end. Pacing is perfect here, too. Track 20, the fourth section, Air. A raucous sound is given to this due to the inclusion of percussion and the aggressive sound of the tar and santur. The harpsichord and gamba are pretty active as well. This has some drive to it. Track 21 is the fifth section, a hornpipe, similar in energy to the Air, but this has more of a seafaring 3/4 feel to it, with a wave-like lilt to the rhythm. Viola da gamba has the lead, but we hear percussion and the santur accompanying. Track 22, the sixth section, Rondeau. Here the tar and viola da gamba play the theme in harmony, and it's rather striking. Track 23, the seventh movement, Air. I liked the deep-sounding tombak intro for this piece, and the quasi-raucous feel the movement is given in this orchestration. It's a pretty brief piece, but I think we should sample this one too. And the piece is really almost finished. Track 24, the final track, eighth movement, Minuet. We end with the viola da gamba and santur playing the swaying theme of this minuet in unison, along with harpsichord and tar playing the bass line. It's a brief track as well. And that ends this fascinating album. The album combines the sound worlds of 18th century Persia and Europe, and it turns out that the two sound worlds meld well together, though with some change to the character of the European music, and I imagine to the Persian music as well. For me, the standout track on the album was Arash Mohafez's solo on the santur on track 11, with all of its intriguing quarter tones. The Baroque works are often ornamented by the Persian instruments, which also occasionally take the melodic lead, and as a result they sort of make the sound gentler and more spacious. None of the Persian instruments used here tend to saturate the soundstage. The recording falls pleasantly on the ear and is often pretty hypnotic, especially in the Persian pishros. I could ask for more presence on the recording, but it works very well as it is, with a discrete distance between the performers and the listener. We hear more than feel the percussion, and perhaps that's for the best in this instance. If you're looking for a very listenable adventure, or you can't afford a vacation this summer, like us, this will take you somewhere, so it's a little bit of a voyage in itself.
This was enjoyable and ear-opening. The instrumentation and energetic performances stand out, making you experience both Baroque and Persian music in a new way. The flow of the program starts the Western listener in a comfortable environment of material with the hondo, getting you used to the Persian instruments, and then it gradually works you deeper into the makam territory. And finally, the Purcell takes you back to the familiar West, but still with that extra Persian flavor mixed in the instrumentation. I really liked the programming, and I enjoyed the playing and performances throughout. This was really interesting.
All right. And from one culture that's in the news these days to another.
Yeah.
Ukrainian piano quintets. How did we program this?
You picked them.
Wasn't, because this wasn't an original choice of mine. I was going to do something else, and then I sort of switched it out to this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now here we have.
I'm glad you picked this one, though, because I enjoyed this recording a lot.
Me too. This is another discovery. This is piano quintets by Vasil Barvinsky, and Boris Liatoshinsky. The performers are Violina Petrychenko on piano and the Phoenix String Quartet. And now the members on this recording are Mykola Havyuk on violin, Petro Titiaev on the other violin, Anna Buda on viola, and Denis Litvinenko on cello. Now, I need to mention that Anna Buda is not apparently a constant member of the Phoenix String Quartet. Their regular violist is Vadim Pedorich, who is mentioned in the booklet note, but he's apparently not playing on this album for some reason, so we're hearing Anna Buda instead. This is on the Ars Produktion label and was released on 20 June 2025. So the pianist on this album, Violina Petrychenko, has been promoting Ukrainian music across Europe for years. The Phoenix Quartet is the resident ensemble of the Lviv National Philharmonic, and they formed back in 2008. And let's just go into this. The first work is by Vasil Barvinsky, who lived 1888 to 1963. It's his piano quintet in G minor, composed in 1912. Barvinsky is from Western Ukraine, and the work is woven with intricate melodic textures and has lyrical and epic qualities. The work, along with others, was destroyed in 1948 because the composer was accused of espionage, I guess by the Soviet Union. Barvinsky, in exile, reconstructed the work from memory, and his music was rehabilitated in 1964. Track 1 is the first movement, I guess you could say, grave quasi sospirando, half breathing, moving to allegro non troppo. So this starts with a folk-tinged melody, and we'll hear plenty of those on the album. The movement features a dramatic interplay between agitation and lyricism. The music has a searching quality due to its chromatic inflections. The piece starts gently and with a throaty texture from the low strings. We often think of that throaty sound when we listen to music from this part of the world. Russia and its the former Soviet satellite nations too. Slavic music in general. The opening is mournful and folk-like as promised. It's got a sensitively played beauty to it. A harmonic writing is appealing. The piano then comes in at about the 55-second mark and immediately brings drama, to which the strings respond with some histrionics. So we have a contrast of moods right away. And Barvinsky sort of sets up the movement to be that contrast. It keeps coming back. Overall, though, the piece has a lyrical sound throughout with appealing writing in the individual voices and in the harmony. And I want you to listen in to the individual voices in the strings because Barvinsky writes appealingly for all of them. The strings move in counter-melodic directions, but it's very clear writing and a clear recording as well that allows us to hear it. And it's some pretty great string writing, I thought. We get a gentle section of the piece, and then the piano comes thundering in with bass octaves, which the strings, acting as the calming agent in the movement, try to bring down in interludes. The music gradually leans towards the more dramatic, with the strings caught in the piano's whirlwind by the 7th minute. They do come in with sweetening melodic sections, as at 7 minutes and 45 seconds. The dramatic piano part seems to exhaust itself by the 9th minute and calms down when accompanying the violin with its gorgeous melody. So let's hear a little bit of this. This is from the 9th minute, and we're really hearing pretty gorgeous romantic style melodies throughout this movement. I rather like that dramatic moment that just suddenly stops and then swerves into another, like, more romantic direction. You do get a lot of that sort of technique in this piece. From this point, the music, though it crescendos, never gets histrionic again and seems to have reached a sense of peace. There's a build-up to the end that results in each individual instrument gently leading up to the cadence. It's a beautiful movement, as is the second and final movement, marked largo sostenuto. It's rather short, too. It's only 3 minutes as opposed to the first movement's 12 minutes. Actually, it's closer to 4 minutes, but still it's like a third as short as the opening movement. This movement deepens the emotional resonance of the first movement. The opening motif reemerges, now infused with a greater sense of solemnity and suspension, as if time slows. The movement is subtitled Prayer. The string texture is chorale-like. The music imitates the measured intonations of a liturgical chant, and the rhythmic contours align closely with the syllabic structure of the Ukrainian Lord's Prayer, the Our Father. This movement is a lot shorter than the first. It starts with a clear string chorale sounding very church-like. Think of those Bach chorales, and you'll hear the same sort of shape. Let's hear it a bit. The religious tone is unmistakable. The strings play the chorale throughout. There is no piano in this movement. It's rather an odd ending after such a big and emotionally active first movement, but it has a calming effect on the overall piece, and on the listener as well. Tracks 3 through 6, Boris Liatoshinsky's Ukrainian Piano Quintet in G minor, Opus 42. Liatoshinsky lived 1895 to 1968, and this piece was composed in 1942 and revised in 1945. And we all know those were the years of World War II. Liatoshinsky is from central Ukraine. This quintet contrasts with the first by being driven by dramatic tension. Liatoshinsky suffered, too, from being denounced as a formalist, and his music was banned from public performance. This piece radiates an unyielding strength that transcends the darkness of war. It's the main work on the album simply due to its size. Track 3 is the first movement, Allegro e poco agitato. This starts telegraphing a grand style with a rumbling piano line in the bass line, and the strings rising up from that. This build-up to the main theme in the piano takes up the whole first minute, and then we hear a big romantic and a bit histrionic theme. Let's hear that theme so that we kind of know what's going on as far as the thematic material in this movement. And that theme, as well as this skittering section that I'm fading out on, come back throughout the movement. All of this eventually heads into the high strings, played rather interestingly without vibrato. This theme sort of falls away as the music decrescendos and gradually falls into the lower frequencies, where we hear the piano's bass play a starker theme in the 5th minute. After this, we get some development of the themes as they pass through some murky harmony. Petrychenko gets a big-boned sound out of the piano, appropriately for this piece. Strings get the theme over piano chords in the 8th minute. The viola has a folk-like theme in the 9th minute. One we heard earlier as the themes now repeat. It's again handed off to the cello, then to one of the violas in its lower end. The last 2 minutes feature a consistently attractive harmony in the strings when they play the theme. The movement sort of dies down as it reaches the end, and the piano gets the last word with a chord statement. Track 4, the second movement, Lento e Tranquillo, has a gauzy sound from the harmonized strings at the opening. They play a wavering figure. The piano comes in about the 30-second mark with a slow, weighty theme. There are gorgeous modal chords in the second minute in the piano, and I love lines like this. Let me play a little bit of that for you. Sort of like if Debussy set a, Ukrainian folk theme.
Yeah, getting into some interesting modal territory there.
Yeah. The strings start playing independently above the chords. A new section starts in the 4th minute in which the piano stays silent while the strings flow through their pattern. The piano is pretty granitic sounding with its chords in this movement and comes in again with chords under a slowly descending cello line. The piano then gets a tension-building line of crunchy chords. The strings come in and play them in a swaying, bell-ringing-like motion. This ends the 8th minute with a return to the sweeter, vibratoless string theme, with the piano playing its own melody over it. By the 10-minute mark, it sounds like the movement is winding down. The piano comes in with its modal chord pattern, but suddenly veers off in an unexpected direction, inviting the strings back in. They play a melodic theme, and tension dissipates with a repeating line in the viola or second violin. I'm not sure which. It gets handed to the cello for the end. I liked the interplay between the strings throughout this movement. Track 5, the third movement, Allegro. The piano starts this rushing theme. It reaches a harmonic crisis with the strings entry. Then they start a repeating phrase pattern that leads to the piano playing an aggressive ostinato line in the bass. There are all sorts of orchestration treats in this movement. The pattern played by the strings sound like a storm building up. At the 2-minute and 10-second mark, the violin gets a clear folk tune melody. It's got a heavy dip to its phrasing, very Slavic sounding. The theme builds up in dynamic and harmonic intensity as it goes, and let's hear a sample. Whew, that is big. It gets to the point where the music becomes vertiginous, teetering on a single point of phrasing. This is all wiped away by the fortissimo passage that leads to an earlier folk-like theme, with some compelling figuration and orchestration placed between the folk theme's phrases. The storm-like music is back, and the movement resolves with its quick dissipation. Track 6, Allegro risoluto. A dramatic introduction leads to a gentler approach in the strings, though the harmony darkens. There's a heaviness to the sound throughout, again, very Slavic sounding. The piano builds up tension through a repeating pattern in the bass, and the strings pick up that bass pattern and play it along with the bass. There's also a crescendoing firm line in the right hand of the piano. The viola is given a lot of fantastic melodies throughout the 4 movements of this work, and it gets another one here from around the 2-minute and 30-second mark. Let's hear that. Really beautiful counter-melodic lines in there. There's a lot of pleasure to be had in the way all the lines work against each other and wind up supporting each other as well. So I'd like to give a shout-out here to violist Anna Bura, who apparently is not the regular violist for the Phoenix String Quartet, for her performance in this work. She sounds great. The tension builds up in the 4th minute where there's a sudden pause. Then the music resumes in the piano range, the dynamic piano range, softly, with the piano itself introducing the new material, which has a lighter sparkle to it. Let's hear a little bit of that. And a big build-up there. Some granitic chord patterns follow in the piano in the 6th minute, and the strings play along fortissimo. A sweeter melody emerges in the violin in the 7th minute. Another tension build-up via hammered-out piano chords begins in the 8th minute. The music eventually arrives at a previously heard grand romantic theme at the 10-minute mark. It may come from the beginning of the work, tying it all together. The work is heading toward a forte ending, but it's suddenly interrupted by a brief sensitive passage in the strings, recalling an earlier sentiment, then comes to its dramatic conclusion. That's the end of the album. These are 2 pieces that are highly attractive on a first listen, and are played compellingly and with obvious dedication by Violina Petrychenko and the Phoenix String Quartet. They make as good a case for these works as possible, though the music doesn't need any special pleading. The Liatoshinsky work needs a sense of its form conveyed, and the performers here provide just that. It's a huge work that could become unwieldy in the wrong hands. Both of these works are well worth hearing in full, especially in these highly idiomatic performances, and I hope listeners will take the time to do that. I doubt these works will get better recorded performances anytime in the near future. It's a great opportunity to hear them here, and we need to be grateful to the artists and to the Ars Produktion label for making them available.
I enjoyed both of these works. Barvinsky's serious and a bit dark, but with lovely melodies. The harmony's familiar sounding, but it does have a lot of surprises and moments of brightness, and it has a religious feel to it. I was really surprised by it having no piano in the 2nd movement, but it was really beautiful string arranging and playing. The Liatoshinsky is a more volatile work with interesting modern harmony and colorful chords, interesting modal changes in there too. I enjoyed the interaction of the piano and strings throughout. It's quite heavy and laborious in the 2nd movement, but the constant changes in musical direction and mood kept me drawn in throughout the work. Really fine playing by the Phoenix String Quartet and Violina Petrychenko.
Yeah, and the counter-melodic content in both works really was compelling, and the ensemble really put that across extremely well. All right, our contemporary composer of the week is Niels Rosing-Schow. He's Danish, born in 1954, and his album is called Signs in the Air. This is performed by Bjarke Mogensen on the accordion, Toke Møldrup on the cello. I'm not sure how to say that O with a slash through it. Anyway, we also have the Danish chamber players and Jean Thorel conducting. This is on the Dacapo label and was released on June 20th. So we learn in Sven Hitveld Nielsen's notes that Rosing-Schow's music has been described as characterized by refined and fascinating sounds realized through seductive instrumental means. His music, like Debussy's, and it's interesting because we do get a Debussy piece on this album too, doesn't depend on the conventions of major-minor tonality. Rosing-Schow wrote a book whose title translates as How Does It Make Sense?, in which he explores how music creates meaning for the listener. One of the points he makes is that to grasp music's meaning, the listener must be able to recall, pay attention, and categorize what they hear. Categorization helps build what Rosing-Schow calls auditory cognitive codes, and I found this really interesting. The more music we listen to, the more of these codes we master, and the better we become at extracting meaning from music. Yeah, because composers will use certain things, from other works, and there's a meaning to it there, and that meaning sort of gets carried over and changed in a new work. So if you're wondering how to even listen to, like, say, Schoenberg's music, you just gotta keep listening to it, and it starts making sense. In my opinion, more listeners need to understand this, because musicians already do, but a lot of listeners don't. You can even think about this if you grew up listening to rock and roll music. There are just certain things you hear that you'll just react to, like a blues progression or things like that. You just know what it is and how it makes you feel. Okay, track 1 is the title track, Dance and Signs in the Air, composed in 2016, and it's composed for Ensemble, so there are no soloists here. Rosing-Schow likes to translate non-musical experience into sounds, and this work is a prime example. It originates from a very specific experience in a park in Shanghai. Rosing-Schow explains that a group of people are dancing to crackling music from a ghetto blaster. A man is drawing the most beautiful calligraphy on the ground. He paints on the asphalt with water that quickly evaporates in the sun. Rosing-Schow was captivated by the poetic scene, even though it was regularly disrupted by the noise of the city. Some guards appeared, and the scene dissolved without leaving a trace, except for an imprint on the mind. So it's as fleeting as music painting its notes in the air. In this piece, Rosing-Schow creates a subtle reference to Chinese music with the help of quarter tones, so we have more quarter tones here. The piece starts with some interesting timbres, a flute being blown into with hollow and full tone intermittently. There's also a strong plucked accenting sound. Sounds drift in and out at the opening. The flute has the sound of something like a high shakuhachi, or really something more Chinese than that. It's got a Chinese quality to its tone and the writing for it. There are occasional flourishes from the piano. The music has no real forward movement. Its tones come in and out, crescendoing and decrescendoing, and seem to suspend time. The piece is very episodic and therefore unsummarizable. Just think of each episode as a separate piece of calligraphy that then evaporates. The music illustrates the scene Rosing-Schow saw in Shanghai. Let's give you a sample of how this translates into sound according to Rosing-Schow's composition. At around the 7-minute mark, I really enjoyed the entry of what I think is the clarinet. It's a warmer sound in a piece that comes across as more pointy or icy up to that point. It's remarkable how you can structure a work so that one instrument's entry can completely change its character. This leads eventually to lower reed instruments making appealing sounds in their lower ranges. They start playing rapidly repeating notes. This leads to more slowly swooping and arcing lines up to the end, and the piece ends with a piano flourish. Track 2 is a work called Granito y Arco Iris from 1999, composed for accordion solo and ensemble, and Bjarke Mogensen is the accordionist. This piece does not originate from experience, but from the conceptual pairing of granite and rainbow, two contrasting natural phenomena. As metaphors, they unlock a rich array of associations. The piece explores the tension between the solid and enduring and the ephemeral and intangible. The music unfurls in three vast waves of movement, progressing from pianissimo to forte fortissimo, each movement uniquely structured, but generally expanding from fewer to more instruments, ending in a prolonged resonance. The opening sounds are wispy and distant and sort of recall Japanese gagak in their opening harmony. The accordion is in there. In fact, up until we hear the marimba, or is it the vibes, this may all be accordion. The wispy quality of the lines continue in the gradual emergence of the orchestra. Honks from muted trumpet and low bassoon come in as the sound very gradually crescendos. At the 2-minute and 10-second mark, there's a steady harmony that seems to mark the section. After this, the harmony is heard in several block chords, and then a wavering wind line emerges. Let's sample that. Okay, again, and when you're listening to music like this, you don't want to try to make any sense of any kind of melody or sort of direction the piece may be going in. This piece isn't going in a direction. We want to just kind of zoom in on the combinations of different sounds that we're hearing and really enjoy that. And I particularly liked this section. This sort of texture continues as it's passed throughout the orchestra with some accordion chord punctuation. The accordion really seems to be part of the overall texture rather than a solo instrument, though its timbre does stand out when we hear it. At 5 minutes and 26 seconds, the accordion steps out and gets a solo. The accordion starts playing some very quiet chords in the 7th minute, sounding eerie, and the orchestra respond with high, eerie sounds in the strings harmonics. There are also some gurgles from muted instruments, all playing with the sound. This section focuses on an overall sustained tone while there are busy whirling patterns within. It ends at the 10-minute mark or so with a sudden forte percussive hit. Then we hear tones crescendoing and decrescendoing quickly, and the piece ends in a decrescendoing fade. Now, I didn't really get the accordion in that sample, but we're going to hear it again in a later work. Track 3 is called Carried Away, composed in 2019 for Ensemble. Here the music's meaning lies in both the sounds and action. Specific notes serve as fixed points for activity, while particular playing techniques draw attention and shape to the structure. The piece begins with a percussive thud accompanying an opening gesture in the winds. Then the piece starts drifting in and out. It's kind of similar to the ending of the previous work, Granito y Arco Iris, so listen carefully for the change of track. The ensemble features a piano, heard just before the 1-minute mark. The piece goes on with climbing gestures in the various sections of the orchestra. Overall, the section up to 2 minutes and 30 seconds has the sense of tuning, of leading up to something the way tuning leads to the opening of a performance. The music calms after this point, with the piano playing slow, descending, lightly dripping figures. This work is about the various timbral combinations and dynamics that they're heard in. It's hard to pick a sample. None will do this continuing, spontaneous sounding work justice, so let's just go for this quiet section about 5 minutes into the work. Some pretty cool timbral qualities were heard in that sample. Some hammered out repeated notes on the piano, repeated in the orchestra, signaled the work's end. Tracks 4 through 6, I found this really interesting. Respiro ergo sum for accordion and cello. Bjarke Mogensen on accordion, Toke Møldrup on cello. In this piece, which reworks Descartes' famous motto, Cogito ergo sum, or I think, therefore I am, here we have I breathe, therefore I am, and the work sort of gives different situations in which we would be breathing and different breathing qualities. It's a pretty interesting work. Track 4 is the first movement, called With Breathless Pace. The work starts quietly with a kind of picking of a muted cello string on a harmonic. It sounds percussive. The bow comes in for quick staccato bowing as the accordion moves up toward its high end. The opening to the 1 minute mark consists of a rising figure. There's a pause, and the cello saws lightly on a high note, with the accordion adding eerie high sounds. I like the bouncing bow and accordion figure at the 1 minute and 30-second mark. Wow, that chromatic descent too is really cool. The timbre quality and the whole hocketing rhythm, I think, is really creative there. A pulsing between the two instruments follows. We heard a bit of that, bringing the line down into its low end, and that's where I stopped the sample. These sort of pounding chords at the end bring the end of the movement. And then we go to track 5, the second movement, Short of Breath. Breathing is made explicit partly through the accordion's bellows, which produce a rhythmic breath in this movement. The cello is given a special bowing technique that lets it breathe too. I like the percussive opening of this movement. Let's hear that. It sounds lightly tribal and features the cellist knocking on the cello's body and creating other sounds on the strings with the bow, other than what we'd expect from a cello normally. The accordion plays a few arabesques lightly over this. It's a cool movement, the most immediately appealing of the works by Rosing-Schow on the album. Track 6, the third movement, called Relaxed, Sleep with REM Phases. Slow and heavy breaths are evoked here, like sleeping breaths. Lightly rising and falling patterns, very faintly heard at the beginning, evoke the up and down of the breath during sleep. Pretty soon the cello emerges with some wispy tones and more solid ones towards the bottom. The accordion produces breathing sounds and some light chords at times. I could swear that the cello is making some yawning sounds in there. Oh, you know. The light breathing sounds are settled back into for the end. It's an interesting concept for the piece. All right, tracks 7 through 12 are all by Claude Debussy, one of our favorite composers. This is his Six Epigraphes Antiques, This was originally for, I believe, 2 pianos, or piano 4 hands, and here it's arranged by Niels Rosing-Schow for a small ensemble. Flute, played by Sven Melby. Clarinet, played by Frederik Frisk van Furden. Bassoon, played by Gunnar Eckhoff. And harp, played by Mette Frank. Track 7 is Pour invoquer Pan, dieu du vent d'été, or to invoke Pan, the god of the east wind. This comes as a surprise in sound after Rosing-Schow's works.
Indeed.
He orchestrates these gently and predictably with the flute, since the work invokes Pan, who played the panpipes. It's extremely soothing and sensuous as it is, and more so in this arrangement. Let's hear it. Nice choice of orchestration there, I have to say. I like the wind instruments, and the bassoon especially. I like the muted accompaniment at the end when the opening flute theme returns, too. Track 8, the second movement, Pour un tombeau sans nom, or for a tomb or grave without a name. This starts with a lonely-sounding flute, evoking the après-midi d'enfant a bit here. It's answered by gentle shivers in the ensemble, barely audible. The piece has a lot of unsteady-sounding chromatic lines, evocatively orchestrated here. Overall, it's a quiet piece, so I'll have you sample it yourself. And you should, due to the orchestration. I especially liked the bassoon at 2 minutes and 45 seconds and after. Track 9, the third movement, Pour que la nuit soit propice, or for a propitious night, or so the night will be propitious, or lucky, I guess. This features a harp and clarinet at the beginning. At the 30-second mark, a flowing melody begins, and I'm going to grab this at that point. Flute and clarinet then play in harmony, with the bassoon providing a rapidly repeated note staccato bass. Different figures emerge like spells to invite the propitious night. Track 10, the fourth movement, Pour la danseuse aux crotales, or for the female dancer with crotales. The dancer evoked here seems shy at first, then the dance begins with the harp evoking the crotales high up at times. The flute line is modal, evoking the East or Middle East here. It's a spacious piece in many sections. The piece ends with a trilling flourish from the winds and a gently descending modal line that sounds unresolved. Track 11, the fifth movement, Pour l'Égyptienne, for the Egyptian girl. This opens with an ominous-sounding chord and then moves into a more appealing modal line punctuated by harp chords. At 1 minute and 35 seconds, we get the bassoon and clarinet into an Egyptian-sounding desert rhythm. And again, I like the choice of orchestration here. Those low, reedy notes are just fantastic. You just heard an evocative section of the work, very appealing to the ear. It evaporates into the mysterious distant tones of the opening melody on the flute. Track 12, the final movement, movement 6, pour remercier la pluie au matin, which is to thank the morning rain. The harp evokes the light rain, and the bassoon plays the melody as the flute and harp present a theme high up. This is another wonderful modal melody by Debussy, evocatively orchestrated here by Rosing-Schow. Let's hear it 30 seconds in. Yeah, I love that bassoon when it gets the main melody. The piece ends cheekily on 2 staccato chords after a flowing melody. I was really intrigued by the originality of Rosing-Schow's approach. The initial inspiration seems spontaneous, as does the approach, even if the overall composition sounds carefully laid out. In other words, it sounds like inspiration hit, the piece's approach was spontaneously arrived at, and then the composition was carefully laid out with great consciousness towards what it was going to be like. I thought the first track, Dances and Signs in the Air, was the most evocative of Rosing-Schow's compositions, perhaps because there was an image I could associate with it given in the booklet notes. For that reason, the piece rhymes well with the 6 epigraphes antiques by Debussy that Rosing-Schow orchestrated at the end of the album. Rosing-Schow really orchestrates with the idea that the sounds integrate in certain ways, so the 2 works with accordion have the instrument blending into its surroundings for the most part, occasionally stepping out. My favorite movement, as I mentioned, was the middle movement of Respiro ergo sum, with its percussive tribal sound evoking shortness of breath. That particular work was conceptualized in an intriguing way. This is an album for the imaginative listener, someone who will visualize, along with the composer, what is being evoked by the composer, and also for someone who likes to zero in on certain timbral combinations and really just enjoy the sound for what they are. I found some of it to be a bit of a challenge, but even those more challenging sections I'm sure will loosen on repeated listens. A creative set of compositions and a sensual setting of Debussy's Epigraphe Antique.
Well, the first 6 original works are all about sound, as you pointed out, and timbre is a large part of that. But it's not only that, the timing and combinations of unusual sounds plays a large role. And what I experienced listening to this is that you have to be patient.
Yes.
Because the sounds come along when they do.
Indeed.
And there are some places where rhythmic passages kind of form, and they really stand out against the more suspended sounds in the rest of the work. So it's kind of a unique approach. And then, in great contrast to the strange sound world of his original works, Niels Rosing-Schow shows that he can also arrange beautiful sounds with the Debussy pieces. And I really enjoyed the sparse instrumentation here, but the way that he chose each instrument and made a unique blend of the woodwinds and harp. And that all came off really as a lovely presentation of Debussy's music. So, yeah, an interesting recording with 2 very different halves, but you get a kind of complete picture of how he sees sounds. All right, over on to the jazz half of the program. We're going to start out with one of our favorite musicians, Fabrizio Bosso, the great Italian trumpeter, back with his spiritual trio here. Welcome back on Warner Music. This came out June 20th. Now, we've heard Fabrizio Bosso about 4 times on the podcast. He started playing the trumpet at age 5, and at 15 graduated from the Conservatorio Giuseppe Verdi of Turin. He's had a long career at the top of the Italian jazz scene and played with big names like Didi Bridgewater, Diane Reeves, Stefano Di Battista, Enrico Rava, and also Maria Schneider. He shows up as a guest on lots of recordings these days, but I'm always looking for a new release from him. And the title here, Welcome Back, signifies a return of this trio, which recorded an album entitled Spiritual in 2011. And as that title indicates, it included a gospel spiritual focus with tunes like Oh Happy Day, Down by the Riverside, and Amazing Grace. And here that theme is back, but with some interesting pop, jazz, and movie theme additions. So Fabrizio Bosso on trumpet, Alberto Marsico on organ, and there's a little piano in here too, and Alessandro Minetto on the drums. Also, we've got a guest appearance by the Castagnole Community Choir. Sound engineering and mastering done on this recording by Carlo Miotti, producer Flying Spark. And the recording is going to get underway with the title track, Welcome Back, an Alberto Marsico original composition. It has a 24-measure structure, starting with 8 measures of spy theme-like organ arpeggios. Bosso enters next with the energetic melody pushed along by Minetto's drum beat, and the final section has a kind of fast boogaloo drive to it. Let's check this out. Back to the organ there for another time around everything that we heard. Let's come back in here to hear Bosso's solo on this one. Soaring high and with lightning quick lines, Marsico follows with a really grooving organ solo with biting articulation, and then one more trip through the melody takes it out. Track 2 is a Bosso original Spirito Libero. A tom fill from Minetto brings this into an organ intro with an Afrobeat kind of feel. The catchy trumpet melody is 48 measures with 3 16-measure sections in an ABA shape. Nice organ bass lines from Marsico there too. The rhythmic feel changes up in the middle. Bosso's off on a playful solo first with repeated rhythmic ideas and zippy lines. Let's hear Marsico and Minetto on this one. And back to the melody for a final run through from there, and it ends with the B section this time. Track 3, You Are So Beautiful, Billy Preston and Bruce Fisher.
Billy Preston, great pianist, but I remember really hating this song when I was a kid.
Now, interestingly, there's some contention about the writing of this tune. Some say that Beach Boy Dennis Wilson had the original idea for the song. You can look that up if you want to see the history behind it. Brian Wilson later said that wasn't true. Anyway, Billy Preston recorded this in 1974, followed in the same year by Joe Cocker, who had a big hit with it. Now, everyone knows this tune, but here, instead of Joe Cocker's raspy voice, we're going to hear Bosso's buttery ballad tone. There's a piano mixed in here, too, with the organ. Now, Marsico does some soulful organ work on this one that I'd like to sample, but if I have to choose, I'm going to go for the stratospheric solo from Bosso later on in the tune. So let's come back and hear that. And he brings it down to a soft ending.
I have to say I like this tune a little bit better now after hearing this version of it.
It was all over the AM radios when we were growing up.
Indeed it was. Couldn't get it out of your ear.
Track 4, a tune by Walter Hawkins, an American gospel singer, songwriter, and composer. Pastor, too. He was very influential in the contemporary gospel music scene. He passed away in 2010. Thank You, Lord. And this is the last track on his 1990 recording, Love Alive 4. It's listed there just as Thank You. A contemporary gospel feel here with an uplifting melody from Bosso. I'll give you a sample from where the Castagnole Community Choir joins in on the tune about a minute in. Also has some really soaring lines toward the end of this one as the choir continues backing. Track 5, let's go to the movies with the theme from Taxi Driver, a tune by Bernard Herrmann, of course, 1976 Martin Scorsese movie starring Robert De Niro.
You know, back when movies were good.
Are you looking at me? This tune has also been done in jazz versions by Tom Scott and Terence Blanchard. The original theme has a kind of bombastic orchestral opening, and then the main melody is played by saxophone. Here, Minetto gives us a tom-centered drum intro, and Basso takes the melody over softly swelling organ chords. Basso's improvised solo on this one is smooth, high-reaching, and has some half-valved fun in it as well. Marsico has a short, understated organ solo before they get back to the theme again to end it. Track 6, a tune by organist Shirley Scott, Soul Song, the title track from her 1968 Atlantic recording with her husband, saxophonist Stanley Turrentine. A great gospel-y organ opening for Marsico with fills and a new beat for the sunny melody that has drum fill sections from Minetto separating the melody sections. Let's check this one out. One thing we like about Fabrizio Basso is that he usually gets the plunger out on any album that he's going to play on, and he does on this tune. So let's have some fun with the trumpet plunger. Marsico plays a soulful organ solo on this one to some more drum fills back into the melody with a slowed gospel-y ending. Track 7 is a Marsico original, Upstairs. Minor and moody organ starts this one out on an 8-measure intro into Once Around a theme that also echoes when he enters. It then builds, rising higher into a new shuffle section. It returns to the original mood for a trilly and reverby solo from Basso. Let's check out Marsico's shuffling organ solo on this tune. Yeah, really nice climax there. Back to the shuffling melody section and a softer but uplifting ending. Track 8 is a Basso original, Crossroads. This has a fast 6/8 Latin groove, and after an 8-measure intro, the main melody comes over a 12-bar minor blues pattern. After a couple times around that, some amazing lines come along, which sound doubled in both trumpet and organ, so that's where we'll come in. Goes off on an organ solo from there. There's a section of new lines for Around into a solo from Minetto, so let's hear some of his drumming on this tune. And it works to an ending vamp that's like the intro to the tune. Track 9 is Horace Silver's The Preacher, from his 1955 recording Horace Silver and the Jazz Messengers, and Minetto takes us down south with a drum intro to Silver's happy gospel-y 16-measure melody that Basso plays muted and with some sass. Let's check it out. Marsico has a choppy and fun organ solo. Let's hear Basso's playful muted trumpet solo on this one. Like interplay around the melody theme there into a drum solo from Minetto with some snare rolls and build up to a final time through the melody with final phrase repeats. And the recording ends up with a Marsico original composition, Stupid Lullaby. Rather than anything stupid, this is quite lovely and almost church-like with a pretty legato theme that interestingly starts out moving in 7-measure segments. Let's hear it get started. And it continues in similar fashion. It's the shortest tune at around 2.5 minutes. It's a fun recording that should have wide appeal, a spiritual center with a choir on Thank You Lord, gospel-y jazz picks from Shirley Scott and Horace Silver, the theme from Taxi Driver too, all rounded out with some fine originals from Basso and Marsico. The production is a bit slick, but the fine musicianship shines through with Basso showing, as always, he has the chops, tone, and melodic sense to rank with the best trumpet players in the world, always done with a wink and a good sense of humor. Marsico's organ playing is great, choosing the best drawbar settings for the mood, and with some well-crafted solos that build up anticipation, and Minetto shows finesse and power on the drums with a nice variety of feels and exciting solo spots, so get your spiritual fix with some Italian flavor.
This is a pretty straightforward album of popular and gospel-like tunes, all clocking in at around 3 to 4 minutes. Bosso has that fantastic sound and technique. You hear a lot of that on this album. Yeah. And I liked hearing him paired with an organ, and Albert Marsico really plays in the gospel mode. Listening to this album, you get the impression that these guys spend a lot of time listening to American gospel and pop records, and are now playing them in their own jazzy way. On drums, Alessandro Minetto brings some New Orleans and grooving rhythms to some of the tracks, and his solos remain tasteful throughout. Now, I have to say, Bosso has been mining this pop field for some time now. We heard him do the fantastic Stevie Wonder album and the tribute to Italian singer and songwriter Pino Daniele, and I'd like to hear him do a straightforward jazz album, to be honest. I don't know when the last time he did that was, but I want to kind of hear him really just sort of play out. He's such a great trumpeter. I want to hear him go deeper.
Yeah, we started out with the High Five Quintet, a lot of post-bop things, and then his albums in the early 2000s were more kind of straight-ahead jazz, and he seems to be having fun with different kinds of pop sources recently. But
yeah, that's his thing now, but I'm just saying, I want to hear that. I guess I can go back to the older albums and see what he did, but we'll see.
Yeah, always looking forward to hearing something new from him.
Yeah, me too.
All right, time for some vibes now. With vibraphonist Tony Micelli. I guess in the old country that would be Micelli, right?
That's right. Yeah, I don't know.
Nico's Dream on Steeplechase. This came out on June 20th. Tony Micelli was born in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1960, and he grew up in Willingboro, New Jersey. He began to play classical guitar in his youth and later piano, trumpet, and drums. In college, he turned to the vibraphone. He came to Philadelphia in the late 1970s, attended the University of the Arts, where he teaches now. He also teaches at Temple's Boyer College of Music and is a guest lecturer at the Curtis Institute of Music. Micelli holds vibraphone master classes around the world, and he promotes the instrument through his vibesworkshop.com, a virtual meeting place and teaching forum for around 4,000 student and professional members. He's also the co-creator of the World Vibes Congress, a gathering of players who shared desire to bring public awareness to the vibraphone. So on this recording, Tony Micelli on the vibraphone, and most of the compositions are his own originals. The great Paul Bolenbach on guitar, an original member of Joey DeFrancesco's organ trio. We've heard him a few times with Brian Ho's organ trio, and most recently we heard him in episode 202, The Spaces Between, on Table for Three, also on Steeplechase with a really great trumpeter, Alex Norris. And we heard some slide playing from him on that recording, which we'll hear again on here, as well as some other great playing. Lee Smith on the bass, Byron Landam on drums here. This is produced by Niels Winter, and I think that may be the dedication of the first tune, Winter Blues. That's Winther. This is a neat tune, starting out with a sparse unison vibes and bass melody. Bolenbach takes over from the ninth measure. Landam has a cool, clicky groove going. You're expecting a 12-bar blues listening to the progression, but it has an extra 2 measures with a fun rising line. Time doubles up for the solos that follow a 12-bar blues progression. Let's hear this. Micelli's up first for a solo there, so let's come back in to hear some of his playing right away. Swinging, snappy, and nice connection of melodic ideas, Bollenbeck follows with a deep and warm-toned guitar solo that rocks out with some cool chords, and Smith has a bass solo with tricky rhythmic ideas, never losing the forward push. Miceli and Bollenbeck trade choruses with Landum to get some drum action in before a couple final rounds of the melody to a slowed ending. Man, there's so much I liked about this tune. I wanted to sample it all, but onward we must go to the title track, Nico's Dream, not to be confused with Nika's Dream by Horace Silver. Miceli starts this out solo on the vibes using some sustain. Listen as the others join in and a bouncy rhythmic motif emerges. It morphs from a 6/8 feel to a 5/8. We'll just get to the start of the main vibes melody in a minute sample. Let's come back in and hear Bollenbeck get started on his solo on this tune with some slide. Into more rhythmic, repeated licks as Miceli keeps the hypnotic vibes bounce going and Landum turns up the drum energy. Miceli's solo is rhythmic and melodic here. The vibes are panned wide in the mix, so when he plays wide interval ideas, the notes ping-pong between your ears interestingly. The final melody section works to fading sustained vibes and spacey guitar. Track 3, another Miceli original, Have a Sense of Humor. A swinging boppy tune that has tricky melody lines tailor-made for the vibes. It's in a basic AABA shape, sounding like a variation on rhythm changes, but with an unexpected extra ending section of 7 measures before Miceli's off on a solo. Let's check it out. the solos follow the basic AABA shape. Bollenbeck has a cool solo too, mixing in tension-building notes and bluesy ideas. On this one, let's listen to some trading from Smith and Landham. Back to a final time around the melody to wrap it up. Track 4, Breathe Deep. A solo vibes opening to this ballad with a haunting melody and a hint of smoldering bluesiness. Bollenbeck is on acoustic guitar on this one. Let's hear it get started. Takes the lead on the contrasting middle section before the first section repeats. Smith's up first for a fine melodic bass solo. Let's check out some of Bollenbeck's acoustic solo on this tune. Great ideas and pulling out those bluesy spots. Miceli's solo is relaxed and subtle, and after the final melody section, Miceli's ending of ringing vibes is really dreamy on this one. Track 5, Somberific. This will get your blood pumping again and wake you out of the dream state. Bollenbeck stays on acoustic guitar and gets this started with a lively rhythmic chord section. Smith has a heartbeat bass pulse pushing things over Landham's light and clicky drum groove. Miceli's happy vibes melody keeps coming up with new ideas over 46 measures, and then Bollenbeck is up first for a solo. let's come back and hear Miceli's exciting solo on this tune. Nice climax there. Smith is next with the bass solo. Miceli brings back the melody into more improvised ideas, and they vamp out the ending, getting softer and softer to just guitar harmonics and cymbals. Track 6 is called Vince Guaraldi, one of ours and I think everyone's favorite pianist.
Yeah, our generation anyway.
Yeah, maybe some of the first jazz we heard, because in the early 70s there wasn't a lot of jazz around, but we all got to know it from Charlie Brown, right?
Right. Not anymore, though. They kind of made it more sort of modern sounding, like more popular music, and I think they ruined it by doing that.
Ballenbeck sits this one out. Miceli starts it out with rubato vibes that get a waltzing feel going. Bass and drums join in. It's a long build-up, so we'll just hear the first 18 measures of the main melody when it comes along. And the next section is built around the same idea into a little vamp and then a contrasting section before a return to the previous idea. It's a long melody. Smith has a warm bass solo on this one that we can check out. Miceli brings back the melody and some final ideas over a quietening vamp to a softly ringing rising line. Track 7 is Green Dolphin's Treat. Maybe they eat it on the street? If you know the jazz standard Green Dolphin Street, a 1947 pop song composed by Bronislaw Kaper from the movie of the same name, you'll recognize the chord changes this contrafact is built on. The melody is something completely different, though, with tricky rhythmic unison figures on vibes, bass, and guitar, and Miceli launches right into a solo. Let's check this out. plays on and on with great swinging melodic ideas. Let's check out some of Ballenbeck's solo on electric guitar on this one, and be sure to check out the tight drum fills and build-up from Landum. Smith gets a bass solo on this one too, before our final time through the melody. Track 8, this is the only non-Miceli original on the album, by Donald Kahn, End of a Beautiful Friendship, sometimes just called Beautiful Friendship. It had lyrics by Stanley Stein, first sung by Ella Fitzgerald in 1956, and then by many others, usually done at a medium tempo and in 4/4. Here, after an intro with a slow 4-beat feel, it springs to life with a light and speedy 6/8 feel. Miceli's off swinging on a solo there. Ballenbeck and Smith have solos too, and then vibes and guitar trade fours with Landum before getting back to the melody. Track 9 is all capital letters YAS. Is it yes? Or maybe it stands for Yet Another Samba. A happy melody in an AABA shape with 16 measure sections. Ballenbeck takes over from the vibes on the B section, and Smith has a great bass pulse underneath. Let's check it out. Section there. Let's hear some of Miceli's solo on this one. melodic ideas nicely there. Bollenbeck and Smith have solos too on this tune. And the recording ends up with track 10, What's That? Tricky syncopation and a stop and start feel to the walking bass underneath. I'm not sure what the structure is here. The main riff becomes familiar, but the sections are in odd lengths of 25 measures, 19 measures, then a contrasting guitar-led bridge section of 17 measures before the final 19 measures beginning with the riff idea. Let's hear this one get going. Bollenbeck solos first on this tune with really speedy lines. Let's hear the ending of Miceli's solo where the mallets really fly with melodic ideas to a nice climax. Through the melody sections finishes up the recording. This is a great vibes recording with a generous program of mostly original compositions from Miceli. There's a mix of hard swinging tunes, samba, blues, and ballads. Miceli's mallets make endless great melodic ideas in his solos at any speed, and he uses lush sustain for dreamy moods and spots. Bollenbeck's solos are creative and exciting as usual, and he adds to the variety of atmosphere with a mix of electric tones, slide, and acoustic guitar. Smith's bass playing propels the tunes with great grooves, and he has ample melodic solo spots, and Landham's drums cover the range of feels and feed the solos nicely with fills along the way, with a few solo spots for harder-hitting action. Great interaction in the playing by everyone throughout the recording.
Yeah, I really liked everything about this. The sound of the vibes is full and appealing. Miceli mostly plays in a gentle style on the album. I also like the closeness of Byron Landon's relatively quiet drums. The sound of the hi-hat is in the right speaker and has an appealing tap to it on the recording. It just sounds great in your ear. The playing, of course, is great throughout, too. Along with Miceli, Paul Bollenbeck gives stylish performances on both acoustic and electric guitar. And his solos have great tone and are as comfortable and stylish as Miceli's solos as well. Lee Smith shows a wide range of soloing styles on the bass, thumping out an appealing solo in Green Dolphin's Treat, and mellowing out on tracks like Samborific and Vince Guaraldi. So I liked his variety a lot. It's really a straight-ahead, great-sounding, spirit-lifting jazz album. I felt much better after this album was over, because it lifted me up. It wasn't because it was over, It's an album with a lot of class in the playing. You really can't go wrong. You really need to give yourself this one.
Yeah, I really enjoyed everything on this. Just the energy, positive vibes coming out of it.
Yeah, absolutely positive, yeah.
All right, and our final recording from saxophonist Nick Biello, New America. on La Reserve Records. This came out June 20th. Nick Bielo was born in New Haven, Connecticut, to a musical family. He first studied piano and then later sax. He attended the Hart School of Music, studying with saxophone great Jackie McLean. He also studied the pipe organ and worked as a liturgical musician and choir director for many years. He moved to New York City to pursue his master's degree at the Manhattan School of Music and focus on the saxophone, also working on his composition skills for chamber ensembles and his jazz quartet. He's been a teacher at the New School and New Jersey City University, where he teaches saxophone, improvisation, and ensembles. He recorded his first album as a leader, Vagabond Soul, in 2018, and last year he released a trio record, Between Light and Shadow. So this is his third release as a leader. On this recording, Nick Bielo on alto saxophone with all original compositions, Charlie Porter on trumpet. He's a Juilliard School and Manhattan School of Music graduate in both jazz and classical performance. He was also a Fulbright Scholar at the Paris Conservatory. We've got George Colligan on piano, Alex Tremblay on bass, and Peter Kronreif on drums. This is produced by Nick Bielo, mixing and mastering done by Mike Marciano. And the recording starts out with a tune called Bel Canto, a swinging 38-measure melody for the horns on this one, sometimes in unison and sometimes harmonized. Let's hear the recording get started. They take it around again with a little bit different harmonization here or there, and then Bielo's up for a solo, so let's get our first taste of his playing from midway through his solo. His tart tone, great facility, and interesting mix of ideas, all played with intensity. Charlie Porter follows with the solo, sounding very fluid, and Colligan has a sparkly solo with tremolos, and Tremblay gets a bass solo too. They take it through the melody again to a vamp for some more horn interaction, and build up from Kronreif on the drums to final horn lines. Track 2 is called Queen of Jordan. This one's got a bossa beat and slinky harmonized horn lines with fun little breaks. It goes around a 32-measure progression twice, but with new surprises developing in the lines all the way through. little surprises keep coming along there. Colligan's up first for a piano solo on this one with fun little turns of phrase. Let's hear Porter's trumpet solo on this one. Nice agility, and I like how he keeps the slinky character of the melody lines in his improvised ideas. Bielo follows, smoldering with double-time lines that swirl up high and dig low, catching on a riff to transpose into a bluesy climax and trills. Once more through the melody, to a slowed ending, finishes the tune. Track 3, slightly perilous, and I'd say more than slightly here. A tricky 16-measure intro with a drum break section takes it into the speedy bebop melody. Familiar changes here, but a measure is chopped off before the next section that makes up for the lost time. Then a syncopated piano and bass create anticipation before the final zippy horn section. Let's hear this. Bielo and Porter both show off blistering bebop chops on this tune. Interestingly, the extra measure in the middle section is dropped in the solos. Let's check out Colligan's piano solo on this tune. Exciting stuff. And that syncopated section we heard before returns there, building up tension with Kronreif's drums into a final melody section of 40 measures. Track 4, Before the Flood. This one evolves in a way that's hard to sample. Drums and rumbling piano and bass make a basis for modal oozing horn lines. Bielo continues on freely, getting joined by Kronreif's drums. Bass and piano join in for backing, and then Porter comes in to work some lines together. Colligan has a short piano solo before the horns come in on a modal main theme, and that's where we'll take a sample from. Porter has a solo next, then more from Colligan, and let's hear Bielo when he comes back for some more. Joins back in there for another time through the main theme. There are still more new ideas with offset horn lines on a final section, and the tune stretches to over 11 minutes. Track 5, A Long Way to You. It's a pretty ballad. Bielo starts it out with Colligan for the first rubato 16-measure section. Bass and drums enter, and the melody continues on for 20 more measures. Porter joins in on horn lines with Bielo for an 8-measure interlude section where the accents disguise the meter, and then he continues on with a trumpet solo, then weaving lines together with Bielo back into the sax melody. We hear the transition section again into a cadenza from Bielo. Let's hear how it all ends up. And the recording finishes up with the title track, New America. A curious bass and left-hand bouncing line makes an 8-measure intro. It goes around again with horn improvisations on top. The melody is long with a repeating 16-measure A section idea. Then there's a contrasting 20-measure section, an 8-measure transition, and then the A section again. Let's hear it get started. After the melody, the horns have some simultaneous improvisations into Biello's solo. Let's hear some of that. Colligan has a piano solo too. The horns join back in from the middle melody section, and it vamps along over the bouncy bass line for Kronreif to work up the drums with horn hits to the end. Nick Biello's original compositions have a lot of variety, taking us on a trip from bebop and beyond with Latin beats and modal mystery. His tunes have well-developed melody sections and interesting structures. There are just 6 tunes here, but there's a lot of solo space for everyone to open up on. I enjoyed Biello's playing intensity throughout. His tone grabs your attention, and his solos are exciting with a searching quality and impressive technique to express his ideas in all registers. Porter's trumpet solos are well-crafted and fluid, and his style and Biello's complement each other. Colligan has enjoyable solos too, and his playing and accompanying is excellent throughout. Tremblay has one bass solo in the first tune, Bel Canto, that I didn't sample, but his grooves and bass lines catch your ear throughout. And Kronreif's drumming matches the mood of each tune, from textured ballad brushwork to exciting drum breaks. High-class playing all around, honoring the jazz tradition on this recording.
It's a rhythmically happening album with a lot of variety, and it's 6 tracks. You only get 6 tracks, but you get a lot in them. The playing on the brass instruments is all exciting, and the piano, bass, and drums are all rhythmically alive as well. Mostly swinging, but there's some digging into the harmony as well. The 11-minute Before the Flood is an eventful track, complete with surprising key change and some Spanish stylings in the phrasing. It's got a majestic quality to it, especially in the key change after the 3-minute mark. Slightly Perilous was a wildly caffeinated tune with bop solos that had me in a roller coaster type of excitement. I really enjoyed the first track too, Bel Canto, which gives all the band members a solo, and the 2 slower tracks set a lightly impassioned mood. It's a rather brief album that hits a lot of moods. I really liked hearing it.
Yeah, really intense solos on this. I liked it a lot. Looking forward to hearing more from Nick Biello. All right, that's going to wrap things up for episode 218. As always, thanks to Fast Signs of Staten Island for our glowing neon logo, and we've got a menu of music ready for next week. What's up on the classical side, Mike?
Well, we just recently talked about La Serenissima, one of our favorite ensembles, playing Vivaldi's 4 Seasons and the Opus 8, and I was waiting for their second release to get the rest of the Opus 8, but they've kind of taken a little bit of a turn here and done something really appealing. They've released an album called Crossing Borders, and it features Katie Bircher on flute and Tabea Debus on recorder. And we've heard her before on that Settecento album that we did in our first year. So this is the first time that she's recording with them again, and I'm really looking forward to hearing this because I really loved her recording and playing. I think she kind of lifted the whole ensemble. Not that they need lifting, but I liked that sound in among all the strings. I've also got a Sibelius Fifth Symphony, and I really wanted to hear this one. This is by the Finnish Radio Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Nicholas Collin. And this has been getting... Some reviews were really high praise, and then I read other ones that were like, this is kind of like by the numbers. I'm like, well, which is it? So we're going to listen to it and find out, because I like a good Sibelius Symphony No. 5. And then our contemporary composer next week is Laurent Boutros, Apatride, an Armenian in Paris, and this is on our Da Vinci Classics label, who are friends of ours, and I really wanted to do this one. It's an album of guitar works by Boutros, and I'm kind of curious to see what he even sounds like.
All right, sounds interesting. Over on the jazz side, You had mentioned that you had checked out Alex Sipiagin's new recording, and I had to choose between that and another one on Crisscross that came out the same day. So I chose the other one that he also performs on because a new musician for us to check out, and that's drummer Vladimir Kostadinovic with his recording Iris. So we're going to have a drum-led group with a nice cast of musicians, including Alex Sipiagin there. Then we're going to hear from sax great Jerry Bergonzi, and he's got a new recording with a pianist that we really like, Carl Winter, and his trio, and that's called Blue DNA. And so that's going to be an interesting one. And finally, one we just have to talk about. Everyone who listens to adult music knows that we love the organ trio, and we also love the Barry saxophone. And on this recording, you're going to have an organ trio and a trio of Barry saxes with the group Buried Alive. What a great name.
Yeah, they even have a great name.
And the recording's called Put It There. It's on Cornerstone Records. And I think everyone's going to really enjoy this.
Boy, if anyone kind of wanted to put out an album that adult music would definitely cover, that would be it. I think somehow there would be a homing signal to this one. Even if we didn't find it, it would somehow find us, Yeah,
it's a real baited hook for us, this one. But it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you want to check out these recordings, get started listening as we are during the week, I'll have them up on our Deezer playlist a few hours after this episode's published. And there'll also be a link to it on our Facebook page. Looking forward to some cool indoor listening in this hot weather. Mike?
Yes.
Any final words for this episode?
Well, we're through the episode and my brow remains unfurrowed, as it always will be.
That's right. No pretension or grumpiness on this podcast.
No grumpiness. Just we can have criticism, but no grumpiness. Music makes us happy.
All right, we'll keep the happy vibes going until next week with episode 219. So until then, keep listening, and we'll see you again next time.